each study ends up being a leapfrog to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. So we get a better understanding of human physiology, a better understanding of human performance and how to optimize human performance. And especially, and this is what I'm looking at and solely focused on, getting the people who are not genetically gifted to put on muscle like they are genetically gifted. My name is John Jaquish. I am a doctor of biomedical engineering. And today I'm going to talk about my PhD experience and really what I got out of doing my PhD in biomedical engineering and how it applies to my career and the business that I'm operating right now. Let's go back in time to right around 2006. I had developed the OsteoStrong devices. So these are devices that put axial, this is the axis of a bone, so axial force compressing the bone so that we can stimulate an upregulation of minerals going into the bone that get retained and become part of the bone matrix. So this was started out as a project where to treat my mother's osteoporosis. So my mother was diagnosed, and as I read about this, I said, Mom, I really don't think you should take the medications for osteoporosis. They have some pretty bad side effects, and I think there's a better way. Like, this is just a deconditioning of bone, and anything that is deconditioned can become reconditioned. So why don't we focus on that? And, she reluctantly said, okay, because she didn't want to take the medications. So in doing this, developed the devices that are now robotic. So the sort of robotic arms close in on the human body and put you in the optimized position. And it remembers for each user account at all these OsteoStrong locations. So as soon as you log in, the machine sort of closes in right to where you're at, that, like for the upper extremity pressing movement, 120-degree angle of inclusion, back of the hand in line with the clavicle. So I developed these things, and then I realized I needed to present this in an academic manner. And so the best way to do that is to go and do my PhD, study my own invention, and document what's going on with my own invention, bring in others who are not biased, like as an inventor I would be, and work with them so that I present in a very unbiased manner how the technology works. Fortunately, the principles of osteogenic loading, which is what I named the therapy, all those principles were already the principles of how you build bone mass. In fact, the laws of mechanotransduction were written in 1895 by Dr. Julius Wolff, who looked at people who were jumping off of carts that they were loading. Like, this is like literally, these people were in shipping in the 1800s. And so they would jump in and out of the cart. And because of that load exposure from hitting the ground every time, they built incredible bone masses. So what Dr. Wolff would do is, after they would die, he got them to sign an agreement that he got the cadaver. He would saw into the bone and then do high resolution photography on the cross section of these bones. And these bones became very powerful. So we've known for over 100 years that huge forces going through the bone mass will elicit a change. The challenge of that was that these huge forces are forces that are well beyond what we see in weightlifting. For example, it has now been determined as of 2012 that exposing load to not only just the femur, but the top of the femur and the hip joint, that's the most important place for you to load, because that's where the mortality-related fractures come from. So if you have a hip fracture later in life, in fact, after the age of 50, you have a 50% chance of death if you have a hip fracture within 1 year based on the complications. So what happens is somebody breaks their hip, they go to the hospital, it takes a lot of body resources to heal that fracture. They don't always have those resources. And then while they're waiting to heal and they're in the hospital, because they can't move around, fluid starts collecting in their lungs, and they get pneumonia, and then they die of the complications. So This process actually ends as many lives as breast cancer, which is completely crazy. So after studying all this, developing the technology, I thought, okay, I'm gonna make a big change for the world by launching these devices and getting it all over the world. So this osteogenic loading, like I said, I called it osteogenic loading. This is basically an adaptation of my PhD dissertation, which is on drj.com, DOCTOR, the letter J.com. You can read a PDF version or you can buy it on Amazon. But do me a favor and do yourself a favor and just download it for free from my website, because this is not an exciting book. This is the opposite of exciting. In fact, it's incredibly boring. But it is the scientific background to why I did all the things I did to launch this technology, so that medical professionals can read the book and understand, oh, I should send my patients to this. There's very little risk of injury. There's always a risk of injury with any physical medicine intervention you're doing. But it's a very low risk, and the reward is very high because you really can recover lost bone mass. So through the PhD process, the most important thing, and I think a lot of people kind of wonder, like, why would I go and do my PhD after inventing the thing? Well, the reason was I needed to be able to communicate how it worked in an academic manner. And if you follow other influential people who write papers like Menno Henselmans or Dr. Milo Wolf, when you look at their papers, you don't just fall out of bed one day and write a paper like that. You got to understand a lot about statistics, not just how to do the statistics, but what they actually mean and how meaningful they are in a larger conversation about the subject. Because I think sometimes people get distracted. They see one study and they say, okay, how does this study change my training or change my nutrition or change my life? That's not really the way to look at it. Each individual study is an experiment where they did one thing to one group and did another thing to another group, and then we look at the two differences, typically what they're doing. Sometimes you can use as a control population data that has previously been published or whatever. So they're not all set up exactly the same, but every study is really an experiment with a particular group of people, and it doesn't necessarily reflect on the entire population. And I think people get a little bit lost in that. And going through that PhD experience, I understood that better than I had even originally understood it. Sort of, you want to take a new study and just consider it in the larger picture, as opposed to really taking one study and saying, okay, this is it. None of them are this is it moments. Sometimes meta-analyses are like that, but sometimes there can be problems with those too. And so you need to be able to identify the problems. You need to understand what statistical tests are being run in these studies, because some of the time somebody will do an analysis of variance statistical test, but that wasn't even the right statistical test based on the data that's being presented. And a lot of physicians don't know. Like, you do a Spearman-Rowe test or analysis of variance. They're two very different tests, and they're testing for different things, but a lot of physicians will just look for statistical significance and not if the right test was used. So I think doing the biomedical engineering PhD enabled me to understand this, be a bit of a statistician, and be able to read research and put it together into a larger argument, which helped get OsteoStrong around the world. And I've mentioned it before. We have 300 locations in 15 different countries. So the clinics are all over the place, and they're very successful. Over 1 million people treated. That's the osteogenic loading devices. But all of this background was totally required for me to see why variable resistance was the best for our training. And so really the most important stuff I learned was outside of the structured PhD program, because it was seeing what happens to the human body through the study of this, what happens to the bone mass, and also while at the same time, because of the way we were engaging the body in this bone density type therapy, it was very obvious that we're missing out on stimulating the body like we could with regular weight training. Because with regular weight training, you pick a weight that you can only handle in your weakest position, which is kind of guaranteed not that great of a stimulus. Now, I always saw myself as a non-responder to weight training. I lifted weights for years, got basically nothing out of it. Since then, so I mean, I graduated high school in 1995. So in the late 90s, there was not a lot of literature about non-responders. Since then, there has been some, and I think the one caveat that I didn't see coming was sometimes non-responders do respond, but to much higher volume. I didn't know that. So I think there are some people who, if they just keep grinding away and do more sets than most people, they can actually elicit a response from weight training. But the problem is with the higher volume approaches, you're looking at cumulative joint irritation and sometimes damage. And cumulative means it doesn't really get better. It just gets progressively worse and worse and worse and worse. And one of my examples I do to people whenever I go to some lecture about, your physical training, whatever, I look at the guys with I imagine have the biggest bench press, and I pick them out of the audience. I go, hey, you look like you have a big bench press. And the guy says, yeah, sure. I said, do me a favor, do this. Stick your arm up. And it's like, I don't really have that range of motion. Right, because you've destroyed the joint. And very strong people often have this issue where so much cumulative joint damage has happened that their shoulders hurt all the time, no matter what they do. And so so this is where like real world experience started shaping what I was writing for my next book, which was Weightlifting is a Waste of Time, to talk about physical training and how anybody can become one of the best with variable resistance as their training method, as opposed to standard weights. So really, in summary, what did I get out of my PhD program? The ability to communicate in an academic manner. And that's what people should look for. If you really want to get good at writing papers and presenting your argument so that other scientists can see what you're doing, and this is the ultimate goal, they can see what you're doing and they can create other studies that leverage off of what was learned from your study. So each study ends up being a leapfrog to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. So we get a better understanding of human physiology, a better understanding of human performance and how to optimize human performance. And especially, and this is what I'm looking at and solely focused on, getting the people who are not genetically gifted to put on muscle like they are genetically gifted. If this video helped you, I want you to subscribe and follow. I'm going to put out videos on a regular basis. I think they're going to help a whole lot of people, especially if you're one of those people that doesn't just instantly grow from lifting regular weights. We've got the answer for you.